Hello, I'm Robert, a fact checker and science blogger, and help people who are scared of various things. This time's COVID-19, and I'm doing what I can to try and get the attention of our government to what needs to be done according to WHO. So the great news is that our government has decided at last that it really needs to do something very vigorous, and it is doing very extensive things. So they used to say a few weeks ago, only China can do that. And now we're seeing radical, drastic measures over the entire United Kingdom, ordering people not to leave their house. I'm not supposed to leave my house unless for exercise once a day. And closing down businesses, closing down lots of shops around the United Kingdom except essential supplies. They're doing all sorts of very drastic measures. And this shows that we can actually do such things, which until now people were saying you can't do unless you're in China and it's an authoritarian or it's a communist government or whatever you want to call China, but this shows we can. So I've sent a series of tweets to the Prime Minister, and the last one is this one. So I'll start with the most positive. It says, the good news is we have shown a free country can take a very strong measures to fight COVID-19. Ours are as robust as you buy ones, but unlike the Chinese, are not science evidence-based. Go back to science now, adjust policy, and we can stop this. So what are our real priorities according to COVID-19, for COVID-19 according to WHO? First, we must test all suspected cases for COVID-19. None of this just, if you think you might have flu but you're not sure but you might have COVID-19, then stay at home. We've got to test them all, find out if they are COVID-19, isolate them. And the way you isolate them, I'm glad to hear that our government is recommending people do some isolation. But they will know, most of them will know that they probably don't have COVID-19, and they won't know, and how many will comply. Yeah, and the WHO conditions are much more stringent. What they recommend. For instance, they recommend that both the carer and the person who's being quarantined wears a mask, a surgical mask, and knows how to use it. And the WHO recommend that before anyone does quarantine at home, like we were doing before they started all this, then what needs to happen is a clinician has to go in and assess this situation to make sure that they are sufficiently separate from the rest of the family or household, and that they are willing and able to comply. You know, they're not mentally. They haven't, for instance, not got the ability. They haven't got Alzheimer's or some other problem that's going to cause problems with them being able to comply, and that everything's set up for them, and they know how to use masks and everything. And United Kingdom is just leaving everyone to just go and read it up on the website or whatever, to find out what they have to do, or listen to these broadcasts. And so the first priority is we've got to test all the suspected cases, and while we're waiting for the test, then they need to be quarantined. Then once the test is up, then we then isolate them while waiting and quarantine them properly, once the test comes back, and if you find you've got COVID-19. And in China, for the people who were not able to do it at home, that's why they had all these stadiums. You know, these pictures of stadiums and community centres and so on filled with beds. That's big for people who couldn't do it at home. And so we should be doing that. Those were mild cases, those weren't severe cases. Those big stadiums filled with beds were mild cases of COVID-19. And so we should be doing that. And they said that in China, one of their main challenges was keeping them from getting bored. So that's what we should be doing. So we should isolate them all. And if they can't be isolated at home, they should be isolated in a situation like that. We shouldn't isolate them in a situation at home where it's not possible to isolate them from other members of the household. Then the other thing we have to do, once we've done that with utmost urgency, then we have to test all the contacts. And by a contact, it means someone that they've interacted with very close contact or prolonged contact. It doesn't mean someone they just walked past. You can't get COVID-19 from just breathing in the air that someone else breathed out. They've got to be talking in your face, or cough at you, or sneeze at you, or or you've got to have or they cough onto things and you touch those things and then touch your eyes, nose and mouth. That's the only way you can get it. Because it doesn't have little droplets that you just breathe out, don't have COVID-19 in it. It's just the big droplets of coughs and sneezes, and they fall down to the ground very quickly within seconds. So that's what you've got has to know that and know how to protect themselves. So we've got to do that. We've got to test all the contacts. So then all the contacts have to isolate themselves. And the United Kingdom did that before they changed to the delay phase. They're not doing that anymore. They're not even checking who your contacts are. So if you've got COVID-19, they ask you, and this is what they do in South Korea, they do in Singapore, they do in China, and they ask you, who have you had close contact with over the last 2 weeks before you got infected? Because that's the incubation period. And they trace back all their history and say, oh, you went to stay with so-and-so, you had lunch with so-and-so, you went on an outing with so-and-so. And they go and contact all those people, tell them to self-isolate. Typically find 20 or 30 close contacts for the average person. They all have to self-isolate and then wait for another 14 days to see if they've got it. And so they've got to wait until 14 days after the infection, after the contact, and then see if they get it. So we should be doing that. And in Singapore, they have developed an app that you can use that uses Bluetooth, and everyone in Singapore puts this onto their mobile phones and things. And then whenever they're near someone else, then it'll detect that you've been within their proximity for 15 minutes, and that's the duration that counts as close contact for prolonged contact within Singapore. And then if later on you develop COVID-19, they can just look at your app and see all the people that you've been in close contact with for 15 minutes over your last 2 weeks, and then they'll ring them all up and tell them to self-isolate. And we should be doing that. That app exists. We can just go and get it, and everyone's got a mobile phone should be downloading that app and using it. And then when this happens, they will now then have the history. But we're not doing that. Nobody's even thinking of doing that. And then the last thing, we have to quarantine anyone who has it until 14 days after they get better. It's not 14 days from when they start to get sick. It's 14 days after they get better. So once symptoms have ceased, you should have no more guests for another 2 weeks after that. So we should be doing that. And the WHO say that physical distancing is a defensive measure. All it can do is to buy us time. We can't win without going after the virus. So these other things are going after the virus, but the physical distancing is that we can't stop it with physical distancing. And so that's one of the things one of the main things that I said in a tweet to Boris Johnson, and that's my most recent one, most positive one. So I think I'll stop there, and I'm going to do these as separate tweets, as separate uploads for people who have a short time. So that's the first one. So the next one is that's my letter to Dr. Boris Johnson. So I'll do that one next.